Hello boys and girls, welcome to the second quarter. I hope you all had a restful break. Kumusta ang break nyo? Was it mabuting mabuti po? I hope you all had this mabuting mabuti po break. Or mabuti po? That's also good, just have mabuting break. Or medyo mabuti po? Or hindi po mabuti? I hope none of us had hindi po mabuti break. As we start this second quarter, we are going to get ready for Filipiniana Week, which is 3 Mondays from now. To be exact, it will be on November 9. To those that are new, it is a week wherein we celebrate the country that we live in, or for some of you right now, the school where your school is located. This year will be different from other years' celebrations because of our situation. But we will do our best to still do what we can to celebrate the Philippines and how we can show love and respect to this country and the people who live here. This quarter, we will think about this very hard but very important question. How do we see God's sovereignty in the history and culture of the Philippines? I know, even adults would have a hard time thinking about this, but I know you are tough and you are smart and you can think through this. Again, how do we see God's sovereignty in the history and culture of our nation or of the Philippines? By this, we believe that God is the one who is at work in everything that happens in this world. That's what we mean by God's sovereignty. That nothing happens without God's knowing or approval. The Bible is filled with assurances about God being the one who has the power over everything. I hope and pray that you will ask your parents about God's sovereignty. It is very important to understand this concept of God's sovereignty so that we will have the right response or attitude as we live our lives each day. When we see people around us, what do we think about them? Do we see them as God sees them? Let me read to you some verses from the Bible that talks about God's sovereignty. From Colossians 1, 16 to 17, it says, "For by Him, He means Jesus. All things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, things that we see and do not see, whether thrones or dominions, the power, rulers or authorities, and superpowers of this world. All things were created through Him and for Him. And He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together." Another one in Matthew 10 verses 29 to 31 says, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are more valuable than many sparrows." So going back to the question, how do we see God's sovereignty in the history and culture of the Philippines? Some examples, and this is what we'll be looking at. God allowed the Philippines to be under Spanish rule for more than 300 years. Then Rizal was born. He was a very smart guy and he loves the Philippines and fellow Filipinos so much. And through him, through the 2 books that he wrote, the Filipinos' eyes were open to the wrong things that Spanish rulers of that time were doing to the Filipinos. And they got the courage to fight against Spain despite their being so unmatched to the Spanish force. That's why our national anthem's very first line talked about the Filipinos being a friendly nation because it was a product of a revolution. And we are just telling the whole world that we are a friendly people. The reason we went into war with Spain was because we wanted to gain our freedom from the Spanish rule. So boys and girls, if you are younger, elementary, you will be listening to this song so that you will be familiar to this very important song of the Philippines. But if you are an older kid, you will be learning it and memorize it. But before you listen or learn this song, let me tell you first what this anthem talks about. So, Philippine National Anthem talks about the country's beautiful landscape, what kind of people live on it, their dreams and commitment to uphold the country's peace and freedom. That was the essence of the song. So, happy listening or happy learning.